You are listening to She Rises, a podcast dedicated to women who are ready to stop settling and start living their lives by design. If you're ready to talk about the stuff that weighs you down and get practical advice on everything from your health, body image, spirituality, relationships, and personal growth, then you're in the right place. Hello, I'm Giovanna, your host, master coach, spiritual teacher, and mind-body expert, and I'm on a mission to unsettle women all over the world. Are you ready to rise? Hey everyone, it's Giovanna here. Welcome back to another episode of She Rises. I'm so excited you guys are here. I'm talking to Jena Rodriguez today about bravery, and I know this is going to be a topic that rings true to a lot of you listening. You know, bravery is not the absence of fear, right? Bravery is not about being fearless. Bravery is about having the fear and doing it anyway. And we often forget that. Sometimes we look at bravery as something that we have to get, right? Let me get the bravery, and then I'll go do the thing that scares me. And actually, bravery is cultivated in the act of doing the thing that scares you. Think about that. Well, today on the show, I'm having a really open and frank conversation with Miss Jena Rodriguez, who's a business and brave strategist, and she's the founder of Brave Masters. Jena was once homeless, and she went from having an amazing job to being a business owner and then being $700K in debt. Imagine that. Imagine that. Some of you listening maybe are in more debt than that. Maybe some of you have been close to that. Maybe some of you have never even been close to that. And just the thought of that scares the crap out of you. And she went through this debt. She went through her bankruptcy and she survived. And she became an amazing entrepreneur, generating lots of money, 1.2 million in her business. And now she actually mentors and helps women around getting their brave on in their business. I'm really, really excited to have her on the show. I love this conversation around bravery. I really hope you join us after the show, either on the Facebook group or in the comments on my website. Enjoy the show and enjoy our conversation. Can't wait to hear from you guys. Hey, Jena, welcome to the show. I'm so happy to have you on She Rises.
Oh my gosh, I'm just so excited, and it's just been so amazing to meet you and get to know you, and so I'm really feeling blessed right now. So thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we just chatted a little bit before we pressed record, and I already know we're going to be soul sisters, and this is going to be a great conversation. And I'm excited. I always get excited when I have amazing women on the show because I know amazing women listen to the show, and so I'm really excited to dive into your story. The topic today is bravery and how to be brave, in all areas of your life, but in particular, you work with women around being brave in their business as well. So I would love if you would share with our audience a little bit about your story.
Yeah, for sure. So of course I love this conversation. And it wasn't always an easy one, right? And I had to discover it for myself, is what is being brave all about, and how does it, of course, relate to everything I've done. And so my entrepreneurial journey, just for those that are listening from that space, is has been a winding road. Number one, I was in corporate America. And I just hit this wall where I was like, okay, I'm feeling a bit unfulfilled. I was feeling, like there's got to be more. I've always had this kind of entrepreneurial spirit of wanting to do something on my own. I've always stepped into leadership in my businesses. In my jobs and my companies that I've worked for. And so my nature is to lead, but that's not always welcome when you're working for other people.
It is so not, and especially being a woman, don't you find?
Yes, for sure. Yeah, I felt that, and although that I always rose to the occasion. It's like I can prove them wrong, right? I can do this. But I felt like my voice was being stifled for sure. And I'm sure people can relate to that. And so it wasn't, I worked at a wonderful place. I actually was very happy there. But something unfulfilled was nagging at me. And I call it that spark of curiosity, which is the first step of getting your brave on, in my opinion. You've got to listen to that spark. And that inspired voice. And so I went down the road of like, well, what would it be like to own my own storefront? And that's what I ended up doing, was buying a store. And I was excited because I have a fashion background. I have a makeup artistry background. I have retail. I have marketing and sales and brand and accounting and all these things. And I was like, I always thought I was a little crazy because I would jump all over the place, but now I get it.
Yeah, you sound like me.
I was like, I think I'm losing my mind. But no, actually, it is exactly what serves me now is being able to see all those pieces of the puzzle. And so I jumped into a storefront. It brought all those pieces together, and I was really excited. I was envisioning multiple locations, and we were going to, all these grandiose ideas. And unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, because here I am now, is 1 year later, I found myself sitting in front of a bankruptcy attorney.
Oh my
And
gosh.
yeah, it was not what I was planning. And I had made $300,000 in sales in the store. Now, keep in mind, people, there is overhead. And so I was struggling to pay rent, and I was struggling to pay my people. And of course, also struggling to make sure that I kept my personal expenses under control and all that. And so it was becoming very stressful. I also had a 2-year-old and a 9-year-old at home, and my husband, and all these things, and it was just like a lot. And the thing that I found was I was also $700,000 in debt. And that's a flipped balance sheet, if anyone wants to know.
That's the technical term.
That's the technical term. That is backwards. And so I was, of course, overwhelmed by that, and I was just sinking and bleeding cash, and I had maxed out everything, and that's basically what created all the liabilities. I was taking risk. I was putting my all in, like that's an entrepreneur, and I also had to come up against this decision. And so I was, like I said, I was sitting in front of a bankruptcy attorney, and I really just wanted to know what my options were, which is, I think, what we need to ask more. It's like, what are my options? What's possible? And so, of course, that wasn't my desired option. However, when you have only $10,000 left in the bank of anything, business or personal, and the restructuring bankruptcy, which means I would continue to build the business, but I had to restructure the debt, was $12,000. And then the personal bankruptcy was $2,500. So I was like, okay, so apparently I only have one option if I'm going to get out from under this, if I don't want to continue. And the thing the attorney asked was, do you want to continue the business? Because I can help you, like, let's figure that out. Or do you want to stop? Do you want to just get out? I said, you know what? The only thing that matters right now is my sanity, my family, my house. Can I please keep my house? And can I please keep my car? And I'll start over. I'll do something else. I know I can, but I just I'm done. Like I've hit my wall. And it was really hard because, of course, I had to tell my staff, and I took this risk with my family and had to kind of own that. But I did. I filed bankruptcy, and then you have to come up against the next decision. And the decision was, do I go back and find a job, or do I stay the course of entrepreneurship? And I made the decision clearly to stay the entrepreneur course. And that came with like fast action. What do I need to do to bring money in, and all those things. But I knew from an accounting background, working for yourself actually has better tax benefits. So I wanted to keep that going. And interesting enough, and I just want to say this for the listeners, is, I can say this story now, but for 5 years I didn't. I was shamed. There was a lot of shame. There was a lot of forgiveness and healing I had to do in order to even stand in front of people and own it and say, this is what happened.
Yeah.
Like, this is what I had to do.
I want to jump in there too, because people listening, I mean, you said something else really interesting before, which I'll get back to in a minute, but people listening might be thinking like, wow, like the brave thing for her to do was just to get curious and jump into this business and like go in. And I actually want to point out for people listening that, yeah, that was brave. And it's equally as brave to know when to call it quits and to say, it's time to let this go and start something new. And that's equally, if not even more brave. So yes. I want to really acknowledge you for that, and also point that out for people listening. Like, this isn't, just one-sided. Bravery comes in all shape and forms. And sometimes it's brave enough to say, I'm done.
Yeah. And yes, for sure. Thank you for anchoring that, because I just went to a 3-day event. It was amazing speakers, amazing successful people that came from nothing. And one of the things someone said was, oh, you know what? Actually, it was a 7-year-old that said this.
Of course it was.
Of course it was. The parents were putting the event on, but this amazing child got on stage and said, "There's a difference between quitting and giving up." And I was like, and this is the 7-year-old. That's the thing we've got to learn inside, if we're going to risk what we risk inside of entrepreneurship or anything worth having in life, is there's a difference between giving up and quitting. Quitting is okay. Giving up is kind of the dead end. And so I hadn't given up on my visions and dreams and what's next, but I quit the thing that wasn't working. And so I had to, it's funny because I have a quote on my screen, my website that I just looked at this morning going, quitting is not an option. And I'm going to reframe that. I'm okay to be honest and go, okay, you know what? I have a new perspective now. And it's not about quitting is not an option. Giving up is not an option. I'm never giving up on what I know is possible in my potential. That's what I want people to get. And that's my stand, is to eradicate unrealized human potential. And Brave is just a part of that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's so much more.
You remind me of that movie. Did you ever watch that movie, Joy, with Jennifer Lawrence?
Oh, yes. Love it. I've watched it 5 times.
Me too. Yeah, I just love that movie. If anyone is listening and hasn't watched it, I mean, if there's like a female empowerment go-getter movie, and it's a true story, it's based on a true story. That's what I was remembering as you were talking. That's what it was reminding me of.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. And she had naysayers all around her, right in her face.
All around her.
Yeah. So you got to face it. You got to just do it anyway. And she had her doubts, when she felt like she was quitting, right, and giving up. And filing bankruptcy and doing all those things. Yeah. I mean, I feel like it was my life, but
totally. Well, I'm curious. I'm curious because when you were starting to tell us your story, you said like one of the first things that you have to have with Bravery is curiosity. And so you got really curious, but then you kind of like I bought a store. And I started this business, and I could just hear people listening now going, wait, what happened between curiosity and I like jumped and bought the store? So like, how do people get from like, okay, I'm curious, what else is possible for me, to then actually like, that's a big action. That's a big, bold, like I'm going to buy a storefront. Like that's huge. How did you get from curious and asking the questions to actually that?
So the curiosity so there's actually 4 steps that I have coined about getting your brave on, to simplify this for people. So one, I'll just list those first, and then we can talk through the story of it. One is the spark of curiosity, and following the breadcrumbs, right? Like, okay, there's an inspiration, right? There's an idea. Nothing is created without an idea first. Nothing. Look around, like the road we drive on, nothing is created in this world without the idea first, or an imagination. And then 2 is decisiveness. It's decision. It's getting off the fence. Yes or no? Which one, chocolate or vanilla? Which one are you going to do? Right. So decision. And then 2 is commitment and commitment and commitment, right? Commitment to that decision. And ultimately number 4 is brave, inspired action. It's taking action on the decision and the commitment of. So when I got the spark of curiosity, I'm sitting in my corporate job, and I'm like, God, there's got to be more. There's got to be more, and so I know there's this thing percolating, bubbling up inside of me. Then I have a conversation, and I owe this. I always like thank her, my best friend from college, my college roommate. She and I were just on a phone call together, and she was talking about her husband and the businesses that he just bought, that were some brick and mortar businesses up in Ohio. And I said, well, where did you even learn of them being for sale? Like, what was that? And so we're just talking about business and what they were up to. And she goes, I don't remember the site now, but she told me the website. I said, oh, wow. Okay. That's interesting. Well, follow the breadcrumb. So what did I do that night? I went on the website, and then I followed the breadcrumb to my area. I live in Houston right now, and I followed the next web link, and then I followed wow, there's a storefront for sale nearby, and I was like, well, what would it be like if I just asked some questions? Like I just stayed in the curiosity. And I did not know that I was going to actually make the decision to buy it, but I started following the excitement. Someone just reminded me, and I've actually said this in the past, but she reminded me yesterday of a client of mine. She said, breathe into the excitement. I'm like, yes, exactly. Remember to breathe into the excitement, because what's right behind it is the fear when you hold your breath, right? And so I followed the website, and I kept going down the rabbit hole, basically. And I picked up the phone one day and called and talked to the owner that was selling it. And then, oh, by the way, I set an appointment with her. And I was like, I was just collecting information. And she, of course, her excitement and my excitement. And then I saw the store, and I was like, wow, this brings, I was a fashion designer and makeup artist and all these things in the past, and sales and marketing and accounting and brand. And I'm like, whoa, this could bring it all together. Like, I could reconnect to my creativity and all this, and it's already there. I don't have to open it myself. Right. I just step into it. So I literally went down the curiosity path, the breadcrumbs, and followed them. And I didn't know what was possible without asking questions. And then it became time to like make a decision. And I was like, well, first of all, I don't even know if I can qualify for a business loan that would buy it for the price she's offering, right? So now I'm walking down that road and asking a banker, or whoever I called, can I do this? Right. And so you have to get the information and find out. And so I just kept saying yes, figuring it out. Yeah, that's number one of my core Brave values, is saying yes and then figuring it out. Well, then it came to a point, obviously, like, she's going to want to know, am I buying this or not buying this? And I looked at my husband. I said, I think I want to do this. I think I want to take the jump and just figure it out. And he goes, okay, dear, if you think that's what you want. And I'm like, really?
What a great husband. Oh, yes, dear.
Yes, dear. I was like expecting a little more pushback. And so he was pretty supportive, and he just said, he had his doubts and fears, but he's like, I know you'll figure it out, and so I did. And so number two is decision. I had to get off the fence. Am I going to buy it or not? Am I going to leave my corporate safety job or not? And I just did. And I leaned into the excitement. And so then from there, I had to commit. I had to commit to all of the steps, all the due diligence, all the negotiations, and all of the steps that are required of you buying a business or even just starting a business. And for most of us. And so therefore I committed, and I kept committing, and I kept showing up, and I kept committing every day. I would show up in that store and sell and build my team and all of those things. And I had to learn through a lot of it. I inherited employees, which I'll just tell you right now was not actually the easy way. That was the harder.
Right. Because you're not vetting the people yourself. It's like inheriting family members or like just other people's friends, right?
Yes, and they all had their agendas, and they were sad about the old owner leaving. Which was her decision, right? She wanted to do something else. And so, yeah, it just brought a lot of different
Crash
dynamics.
Course in leadership, right?
Oh yeah, for sure. Holy cow. So it was good. And then until it was a new decision called, I'm 2 months behind on rent. And then I followed more breadcrumbs. I asked my landlord, I said, look, you can see my situation. Can you please just put me in a smaller space? And he said no. He said no. I didn't just decide bankruptcy. I went and asked other options, and I was running into no options.
Well, that's what I find so extraordinary about what you just shared, because there's almost like, I love the 4 steps, and there's almost like these sub steps. My friend Jackie, who teaches flow principle, always says, follow that which is in your highest excitement, which is what I heard you kept doing.
That's good.
And the breadcrumbs along the way were presented in such a way that it almost like, it wasn't easy, but there was an ease of flow into what was happening, which a lot of people, I've written a lot of blog posts and done a lot of videos about doubt and decision making, because I've been someone who in the past has been paralyzed by decision making. And when you are following your highest excitement, like the second you make a decision, it's like the universe rushes in to support you. And if it's not supportive to you, the next breadcrumb is a little more difficult. Maybe it's crusty, maybe it's not a great breadcrumb,
maybe
right?
It's burnt.
Right. And they're all little detours along the way. So what I really got from what you were sharing is you were really being supported in this process. And I tell my clients all the time, like, there's a real power in making a decision. And, it sounds like, to people listening, your final decision was to, like, yes, get the place. But you were making decisions all along the way, and it was
Yeah,
it was rushing in to support you. So yeah, I love that. I love that
sure.
story.
I love that. Yeah, you bring that up because I think, my journey, and I'm still on it. I've got some other decisions to make, and big things to step into. And every single time I'm staring in the face of that decision. The thing that I am consciously aware of, and yet I'm still human, is there's a difference between what I call the inspired voice and the shallow voice, or the shallow ego voice, right? The
Mm.
ego, and the separateness that the ego likes to put on us, or we allow, from the inspired voice. I always picture that inspired voice, our higher self, God, spirit, whatever you want to call it. I believe in all that. Universe is sitting in a rocking chair, just waiting, just
Oh
like
my gosh.
patiently
Yes.
waiting,
Yep.
right? If you would just sit down, ego, sit down, shallow voice, be quiet, you could probably hear me, right? And so when we're in the space of decision, if we can get quiet, and I'm going to admit something very clearly right now. I've started meditating, and I meditate every single morning for it's going on 2.5 months now. I dabbled in this practice before. I liked it. That wasn't nothing against it, but then there was also the ego going, that doesn't work. I can't even sit quietly for 10 minutes. What do
Right.
you
Yeah.
mean?
Go get
Right?
another cup of coffee. What are you doing? Yeah,
Yes,
totally.
go do something. I mean, heck, it was telling me all the things I needed to go do first thing in the morning. That's what the ego was doing. It was keeping me from being quiet. I was allowing it. But the point is when we get quiet, we actually have to face ourselves, and that ego doesn't want us to, right? The ego's like, oh, I got to navigate this,
You're
I
speaking
gotta
my language, girl. Yep.
mitigate, damages. I gotta make sure this isn't going to go anywhere. And so wow, the power of getting quiet so I can hear my inspired voice. And so I encourage people,
Yeah.
find whatever method. I mean, clearly, I don't know what other way. Meditation just seems to be the common thread for that ability, to practice that ability. And I think that's the point, is we don't practice it enough. And I wasn't. I could hear it. I could hear it occasionally. I obviously, that's what my brave actions, and sometimes it was out of brave by survival, and sometimes it was, now I live more in brave by choice. And that brave by survival is that fight or flight. It's kind of like, hurry up and get out of danger, get out of this fear and constant lack of safety, but now I don't live in fear like that. I don't live in a space of, my childhood was, after the divorce, I ended up in a domestic violence household for 5 years. So, I was not safe. I didn't feel physically safe, let alone emotionally safe. And I moved out at 14. Another brave thing, but that was brave by survival. That was like, I can't do this anymore, like
Right.
fight or flight.
Time to get
But it's
out.
still a choice. Yeah, had to get out.
Well, I love what you
And
say there, because a lot of people think that bravery is being fearless, and it's just a
oh
matter
no,
of fearing less. And
yeah,
someone, the definition of bravery is having the fear and doing it anyway.
correct.
And that's really, really key. And I love that you just shared that, because actually, and people that are listening that are avid listeners will laugh, because I say this all the time. It was kind of funny and like sad at the same time, when I had the awareness that for the first 36 years of my life, God was standing behind me with her arms crossed, tapping her foot, saying, "Hey, let me know when you want me to jump in here." And I was like, "No, no, don't worry, I got it." I'm like, "All right,"
Uh-huh.
And so I
Uh-huh.
love that you
Yep.
brought that in, because in A Course
Yeah.
in Miracles, which I'm a student of, it says the ego
Me
speaks
too.
first. Oh, I knew it
Yep.
from the language. But the ego speaks first, and the ego speaks loudest. So if you need to tap into the still small voice, we have to quiet out all the distractions. We have to
Exactly.
literally, quiet the mind and quiet the surroundings. So I love that you brought that in.
Yeah, that's so funny. I didn't know you said that about tapping the foot, but
Yeah,
that's
it's like the funniest
right.
thing. Funny. Well, I mean, it
Yeah.
wasn't funny because when I realized it and I had that image come to me, I was like, I kind of did like, the slap on the forehead, like, oh, yeah, that's
Uh,
totally what I was doing. That's so insane. And then later it kind of became funny, like that's how I was living my life, but it was. And and I could easily default back into that. We all can. Like you said, the ego is loud and
it's
not
screaming
tap
all the
in.
time.
Right. Yeah. So I just love that came in. Yeah.
Yeah, perfect. Oh, it is. It's always perfect. I don't know what I'm gonna say.
Yeah,
It's coming
exactly. It's
to my
awesome.
thing, right?
So
Yeah.
I'm just curious, like what do you see predominantly with the women that you work with? Because, we're talking about bravery and, people I'm sure are resonating with what we're saying and they're like, oh yeah. And and then there's this idea of like, yeah, I got to get me some more of that. And it's almost like sometimes there's this idea that when I get more brave, then I will do that thing. But don't you
Mhm.
find that bravery comes in the act of doing the thing?
Oh, sure. Yeah. Um, so brave is not something you go get, right? Brave is who you
Right. You can't
be.
buy it
It's
on
something
Amazon.
you, yeah. Yeah, you
Damn
can't
it.
buy it on Audible, right? However, I'm working on my Brave Factor book. I don't know what I'm calling it, but you'll be able to buy a book about it. But
Awesome.
it's so yeah, brave is, and that's what happened to me, or I, it came through me. Is I was standing on a stage about, I think it was like 5 years ago. I don't really remember which stage. And I said I always like to bridge my points. I mean, I'm moving through my talk very divinely guided, and I bridge points from here to there with points of view. And something came through me. I didn't write this down until later. Is that entrepreneurship's not the easy way; it's the brave way. And because it's not easy. I mean,
Mm-mm.
and things are not easy. I mean, there's all kinds of, I mean, whether in corporate world and you're trying to climb the ladder or whatever. But I was speaking to entrepreneurs, and I know that me staying in the game after that bankruptcy was not easy. It was brave. And so I heard myself say that, and I went, where did that come from? And then I wrote it down and followed the breadcrumb of this conversation. And I started asking myself questions, the curiosity, right? Spark of curiosity. And I was like, what is this about? Why did I say that? And then I just saw how, my decision after I left the storefront, and for me to stay in the game was brave. It was me, like not giving in to the fears and doubts and all that. And so then, I mean, I have a podcast because of it called The Brave Entrepreneur. I have a Facebook group. I have a company now called Brave Masters. All of it's inside of the breadcrumb. But somebody asked me on an interview, when did you first become brave? And I was like, hmm, like it's something that we do,
Yeah.
right? And I,
Like it's a destination.
uh-huh. And I said, I've always been brave. And I said, so let me just say this. I think the first time that I can remember really getting my brave on, because I didn't know I was being brave. I was just doing what's next, right? I was just, moving, making decisions, et cetera, and committing and taking action, was when I moved out at 14. I had to I had to make a decision that I was moving out, that I could not go home. And then I literally was in spring break in 8th grade, crying because it kept getting closer to the end of spring break, going, I don't want to go home. I don't want to go home. How do I tell my mother? You know, and so I actually had to call her like the night before I was supposed to go home, and crying and bravely tell her my decision, and that I didn't know how I was going to do it, but I'm not coming home. Like, this is not okay anymore. And you can live with the man, but I'm not living with him. I'm not doing it. And she was like, okay. I was like, really? You
Yeah,
know,
decision made. No
decision.
arguments.
No, yeah, she and I think intuitively knew. We're pretty connected that way, and yet she, what I also now what. So this is me in my 40s, looking back, going, that was a brave moment, but that was me just being me. I've always been brave. I
I
just
love
need
that
to
you said that. Because I think everyone I
is a
is
brave.
yeah, like I just think like I've always, I resonate with that too. Like I've always been brave and I've always had fears. And
They don't go away.
They don't go away. So I've always been brave, and I've always had fears, and bravery is a choice. Like, I love that.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's like literally, I mean, I believe last year I learned through these podcasts, by the way, I learned through the interviews, somebody asked me another question, and I saw the difference, the distinction between my brave before, kind of my life before was very much about victim. I was like, this is happening to me. I can't believe this. But I had this spark of curiosity going, there's got to be a better way. I started studying the Course in Miracles when I was like, I think 19, 20 years old. And I went away from it a little bit, and then now I'm back, and it's just it's just so freaking right on, like the ego and everything and the separateness that we create. And so, she asked me that question, and I went, okay, so I think the difference for me now is that Brave by Survival has this fight or flight element. It has this, like running from something instead of going towards something. And the Brave by Choice that I live in now, because I'm safe, I have a great life, a great family, great house, whatever. I don't have that same childhood and that same circumstances that I had before. And even I was homeless basically in 1998, hopping from couch to couch. I had a cat and a car. That's it. And
wow.
I was like, I'm either going to sleep on a couch or I'm going to sleep in my car. Like, that's what I have. And thank you, angels of friends, people going, you can sleep on my couch. I'm like, well, thank you. That helps, But I just stayed in, okay, what do I have to do next? But that was like this level of survival. And depending only on myself, which is totally an ego trick, which is what you just brought up. It's like, no, I got this, right? I can do it myself.
Right. Yeah, I know everything. Myself.
Yeah. And actually that's not I ran myself into a spiritual wall last year. Just not too long ago, like December, doing that.
It's so easy to fall into that, right? Like it's so
easy.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
I think it's because we're not living. I mean, I started living consciously. Well, I made a decision called I choose to live consciously aware, not unconscious in my life. And that's going to be painful because I have to face myself.
Oh, totally.
Right? I'm like, and I believe entrepreneurship is the ultimate personal development course.
Oh my God. I say that all the time. I knew we were soul sisters. I say that all the time.
I know we are.
I took it from my very first business mentor said to me, she's like, if you want the best course on personal development, start your own business. And I'm like, yeah, totally. I get it. My spiritual mentor, who I'm still very close to and friends to this day, who I love dearly, I started seeing her when I was 19. And I always share the story that, like, when I went to see her, she said to me, okay, two things. Does it bother you to talk about spirit or to know that spirit is there and around us? And I was like, no, I'm good with that. And she's like, and the second thing is, are you sure you want to start this journey? Because once you start, you can't go back. And I was like, yeah. Like, what did I know when I was 19? So, now in my 40s, I sometimes talk to her and I'm like, yeah, you remember when I said that thing? And I said, yeah. I'm like, can you stop the bus? I want to get off. Like, it's like... Yeah, totally.
This is what we signed up for.
Right, exactly. And you get on the bus and you get off the bus and you have moments where, like I say, I go temporarily unconscious and then I'm like, oh, I got to get back to this. And we're all, none of us are gurus. None of us are enlightened. We're all, it works in progress. And some of us are more ahead than others. And yeah, well, I mean, Jena, I'm like looking at the time. I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe we're already at time. Like I could just keep talking to you and talking to you. Yeah, there was even some other stuff. We might have to have a part 2. I don't know, because there was some other stuff that came up I wanted to bring up. But I just wanted to, first of all, thank you for being brave and coming on and sharing your story. Because like you said, earlier on, it's not easy to face this. It's not easy to admit these things sometimes. So I just really appreciate you, and I appreciate you coming on and being a guest on the show today.
Oh my gosh. I would love a part 2. Or
yeah.
Have coffee by Zoom, whatever. But
totally.
I thank you so much and just for the opportunity. And I'm so excited that we know each other now. Like,
yeah, me too. Me too. I love it. I've had such a great conversations as of late, and I'm going to put you in the soul sister category. Maybe we'll do part 2 on your podcast.
Yes, absolutely. I want to reciprocate for sure. Like, I think that would be amazing. So
cool.
Awesome.
I'm sure my audience would jump on over and love that too. So thanks, Jena, so much for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for tuning in, and keep rising, everyone. For books and resources related to today's episode, make sure you head over to sherisespodcast.com, and I'll see you there. If you've enjoyed today's episode, make sure you tune back in next week when I dive into more juicy topics to help make your life the best it can be. And hey, if you've enjoyed listening to the show and you love it, head on over to iTunes and leave me a rate and review and subscribe there to the show.